All right, well, welcome everyone. Folks continue to join, but that's fine. We might as well get started. My name is Dr. Jamie Heilman. I teach Latin American and Caribbean history here at the University of Alberta. I'm also the undergraduate chair for history, classics, and religion. So today you're going to hear from a few of the key advisors in our program about who they are, but also the programs that we offer. We also have representatives from our undergraduate societies here to talk about their organizations. So at any point, if you have a question, you can just start typing those into the Q&A. What we'll do is we'll have sort of brief presentations for about 20 minutes, and then we'll turn things over to the Q&A. If you have questions that come up for you after the session has ended, I have typed my email address into the chat box. You can simply send me an email after the session if your question didn't get answered or if something new occurred to you in the interim. All right, so let us get started. The first person we will hear from is Dr. Aidan Oswald, who is the Director of Classics and a Professor of Classics. So Dr. Oswald.
Thank you, Jamie. So yes, I am the director of the Classics program and a historian of Imperial Rome as well. But I'm here to tell you about our courses, our program, and our discipline. So we cover ancient civilizations in general, but especially the Mediterranean world, which most familiarly means ancient Greece or Rome. But also the areas that are now Syria, Turkey, North Africa, West Central Europe, etc. These are times and places about which we have a unique range of sources and have had a unique impact on contemporary culture. And this means that there are lots of different interesting approaches depending on what you like to study. And that can mean one or two courses, or it can mean an entire major. Our classical studies courses do not require ancient language preparation. At the 100, the 200 level, you're looking at courses of 100 to 50 students where you can look at all kinds of topics. If you are interested in just everyday life, what was it like to be in an ancient culture? What kind of houses, cities did they have? We have courses in that. If you are more visually oriented, we have courses on ancient art, the kinds of things people express through vase paintings, mosaics, etc. If you're into big ideas, religion or philosophy, we have courses on mythical gods or heroes, but also the origins of Christianity. For the science side of things, we have courses on the ancient science, but also the origins of modern scientific and medical terms. For political history, politics and political history, you can learn about the origins of Athenian democracy or about crazy Roman emperors, which is my department. Also ancient ideas about multiculturalism, about imperialism, about resistance to imperialism. And these can give you a deeper and a richer and a more critical understanding of how a lot of aspects of our own world originated and have developed. And lastly, it's also great to look at these civilizations on their own terms. And our advanced courses will give you the skills and the training to engage fully with the products of the ancient world, whether they are material objects that you can go to our field school in Greece and excavate during the summer, or whether it's literary texts in Latin or Greek, which we can teach you from the absolute beginner level to the point where you can engage directly with authors like Homer and Plato and Augustine in their own language in a really deep and immediate way. That's the kind of thing I geek out on, but there are all kinds of different options for whatever you're looking for. And we look forward to seeing you there.
Great. Next, we will hear from Dr. Josie Hendrickson, who is the Director of Religious Studies.
And I will unmute. Okay, so my own specialty is the study of Islam and in particular Islamic law. So what is religious studies? It is the critical academic study of religious beliefs, practices, texts, institutions, and communities. We ask things like, what is religion? How has it functioned in societies, past and present? What is daily life like for an adherent of a particular religious tradition? How have people in these different traditions answered the enduring questions of life in different ways, and why do they have different answers to these questions? And when we think about these things, there's three things that characterize our approach to these kinds of questions. We are non-religious, interdisciplinary, and often comparative. So by non-religious, I mean that we don't have any shared assent to the same religious truth claims, like you might find in a professional program that prepares you to go minister to a particular group of people, for example. We wonder things like, why did Muslims adopt this doctrine instead of that one when they came to a moment of decision? Or what is ritual? What is shared between a ritual that someone might do on the pilgrimage to Mecca and someone in a village in southern India, for example? We don't ask questions like, is Judaism true? Or is this person really Christian? So no questions like that. Second, we're interdisciplinary. So we, as scholars of religious traditions, we might be anthropologists or historians or sociologists. And when you study religion in a program like religious studies,
the only one who's frozen.
Uh-oh.
Shoot.
Am I frozen still? Sorry. Am I? Okay, am I frozen?
Sorry about that, I dropped out there.
Oh, okay, so maybe I wasn't. Okay, so we as scholars of religion are interdisciplinary, and you as students, when you take courses, you can take courses all across arts and even in other faculties. So if you were interested in Buddhist visual culture, for example, you could go over to the history of art. History, it's a really long, complicated name. History of art, design, and visual culture, and take a course on Buddhist art. Or you could go over to anthropology and take a course on humans and the supernatural. There's courses all across campus that we count for religious studies because they all touch on religious studies in some kind of way. And lastly, in addition to being critical and academic and interdisciplinary, we're also often comparative. We have a lot of classes that are devoted to one particular tradition. So you might find an introduction to Islam or Judaism or Hinduism, but we think in these broad categories like pilgrimage or ritual. And so you'll find comparative material in a lot of our classes, and some of our classes are explicitly comparative, especially at the 100 level. So for example, this fall, there's a class on apocalypses. What is an apocalypse, and what kinds of apocalyptic moments have been envisioned in the past or might we be experiencing now? You can look at a range of ideas about them across traditions. And we have another one of these comparative courses in the winter on pilgrimages and sacred journeys. So we don't just look at one tradition, we think about that category, past and present and around the globe.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Hendrickson. I will speak next for history. First off, I think it's really important to understand what it means to study history. What it does not mean is memorizing long lists of names and dates. Absolutely not. Instead, what history really is the study of change and change over time. As historians, we study past worlds and think about, how they've transformed over the course of sometimes decades, if you're a contemporary historian like me, or centuries, even millennia. It's really a way of thinking about how past societies, past environments, governments, beliefs were different from and also similar to the ones that we're more familiar with today. In many ways, it's about finding clues about how things used to be and piecing those clues together to craft stories, true stories about ourselves and about others. So if you sort of come to the vision of history as just a whole bunch of names of famous dead guys and long wars, it's so much more than that. In terms of why study history, I really have sort of 3 reasons that I think about why it's worthwhile to study history. The first is that, studying history as your undergraduate major can give you really outstanding preparation for a rewarding and lucrative career. I know there's a lot of sort of misinformation about arts degrees, about history degrees that really doesn't qualify you for a career, but it's really not true. Our graduates go on to really excellent careers in a broad range of fields, because in history you really do get a lot of training and research skills, communication skills, and essentially questioning skills that will well prepare you for a career in a number of fields. A second reason to study history is that when you study what you're passionate about, as opposed to what you think you should study because it's what, I don't know, your high school guidance counselor or your parents or society tells you, when you study what you're passionate about, you end up, opening not just career paths, but life paths, in that you meet like-minded people. My closest friends are, like me, historians of Latin America. And we get along so well, not only because we're super nerds, but because we have the same kinds of interests and concerns. And those kinds of personal connections are just so much harder to forge when you're studying something that you hate, as opposed to what you're passionate about. And then third, and most abstractly for me, studying history is really the essential way of helping me and my students to understand the present. How is it that we got to this point? How is it that certain oppressions ended and others have continued? How is it that certain laws came to be? How is it that certain beliefs or trends fell by the wayside? So for me, really, sort of studying history is the way to understand our present moment, both by what was similar in the past and what was different. Next, we'll hear from Dr. John Kitchen, who is the director of a program that in many ways combines the coolest aspects of classics, history, and religious studies, in that he is the director of our ancient and medieval history program. So Dr. Kitchen.
Hello, thank you for joining us. I am fortunate that my colleagues have already spoken, and especially in relation to the comments that Professor Kamisis made. I ask you to imagine everything that he has said, Professor Kamisis and my other colleagues. Imagine that, but enriched and expanded by turning to the medieval world in combination with ancient studies, the classical world. So for those of you who are interested in combining an approach to the past, we offer a program, a coherent program, which allows you to do both. Study the ancient world in conjunction with the medieval world. Traditionally, this makes a lot of sense, at least for those who are interested in the study of the West, because the legacy of Greece and Rome was both inherited by the Middle Ages as well as greatly reworked. At the same time, we are broader than just that inheritance, as my colleagues have already discussed, especially Professor Hendrickson. The mythologies, the cultures, the belief systems, the religions can also be studied in relation to each other. That is the ancient medieval world, but also the world of Islam, even the Near East, Hinduism, as well as classical mythology. So if you're interested in that combination, I encourage you to consider the combined program in ancient and medieval studies. In addition to the standard courses, both lecture and in-depth, you can also, if you want, and I emphasize if you want, you can also study the ancient languages, which makes a great addition to historical studies. And if you want to contact me, you can't forget my name. It's easy, John Kitchen. So that's easy to remember. Thank you very much. Glad you're here.
Great. Let us hear next from the co-presidents of our History and Classics Undergraduate Society, Teagan Cameron and Joshua Lee.
Hello there. I'm Joshua Lee, the History President of the History and Classics Undergraduate Society, and Teagan Cameron is the Classics President. Just say hi to let people know who you are. Hello. Teagan. There we go. So today we're just going to give you a quick little rundown of the club and why you may want to join it. So I'll be talking a bit about the past to give you a bit of a better idea as what we'll be doing in the future, and then Teagan will be talking more directly on that immediate future. So in the past, some of the events we have held are just simply not possible this year. So for example, museum and archival tours, we won't be able to do those, but most of them we will be able to transition online, such as on the more social side of things, board game nights, movie discussion nights, D&D sessions even, and all of these have a sort of historical or mythological twist. So for example, D&D, one of the settings we had was Arthurian England. So, stuff like that. On the more academic side, you can help with, any history or classics courses you may be, and if you have any trouble, we can help out with that. If you're in Latin or some other language classes, we may be able to help. And if you're interested in going into honors for history or classics, we can, help you get into that as well, give you advice on that. So what the workload would kind of be and where to get started for all that. And now to speak more on the immediate future and kind of the experimentation that every university organization is doing in September is Teagan.
All right, thanks, Josh. So, hello, I'm Teagan Cameron. I am the Classics co-president for this year. Looking at the fall semester, we have been able to translate a lot of our normal events or regular events into an online format, mainly using our Discord server, which one of us will see if we can add to the chat at some point. So, these events include board game nights, as Josh mentioned. Dungeons and Dragons will be able to continue our movie nights and movie discussions. We'll also be able to translate online, and we'll be holding a number of events every week. This also includes our academic events, such as study sessions and peer review sessions for papers. Looking at the very immediate future, if you're interested in learning more about our club and interacting with other students of history and classics, our first event will be on September 4th from 5 to 8 p.m. We'll just be doing some online board games to get to know each other, and we encourage you all to be there.
Great. Thank you so much. We will next hear from Aidan Oswald, who is the president or one of the co-presidents of the Religious Studies Undergraduate Society. Aidan?
Thanks for the time and allowing me to be on the panel. Briefly, just wanted to discuss who finds themselves in the Religious Studies Undergraduate Association. During the course of anyone's art degree, I think, the majority find themselves in a religious studies class, be it by mistake or simply out of pure interest. For those who have enjoyed the religious studies classes, and enjoyed them so much that they want to talk about them with other students, they've probably done so in our events. So mainly, the Religious Studies Undergraduate Association is comprised of just the students. They don't have to be minors or majors, but just anyone who has found an interest in religion at some point in their lives, or an interest in the academic study of religion. Now, our events over the course of last season have been primarily social events over drinks. We had an event where we built our own religion, and we had a competition with prizes. And it was basically whoever had the most creative religion. I believe one of them was an IKEA religion. There's plenty of creative opportunities in these events, but the main thing though is that there are wonderful students from a diverse areas that all come together to talk about what they've learned in class, or maybe their ideas that they've come up on their own. Now, in the future, we will be holding online events, and unfortunately, we can't do it in person, but for any of those people who are interested, they can, contact us. They can look through our Facebook page. Our Facebook page is the University of Alberta Religious Studies Undergraduate Association, I believe. If you look us up on Facebook, you'll probably find us.
You can type it into the chat as well.
I'll type it into the chat. I'll find it for everyone because it's hard to think about it on the top of my head.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's basically about it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So before we open things up to questions, I did want to take a moment to talk about our different honors programs. Unfortunately, our classics honors advisor had an emergency tooth problem. So Dr. Fran Pownell would be the professor to reach out to if you have any specific questions about classics honors. But in her stead, even though she's irreplaceable, I can just tell you that the classics honors program is a really great way to have an opportunity to just dive deep into a sort of exploring a subject that you're really, really passionate about. It's the chance in your 4th year to write a thesis in which you work one-on-one with a faculty member as your advisor. And it also allows you to be part of a cohort of like-minded students. So that chance to balance both academics and those friendships with sort of like-minded, as my colleague Dr. Cameron sometimes refers to himself, nerds and geeks. Dr. Cameron, did you want to share some of the, anything else about the Classics Honors Program in Dr. Pownell's absence?
Not really, other than to say that we've had students really get involved in some marvelous things. We had a student who went just full out on all kinds of ancient language things, learning kind of Old Welsh and any number of other languages in order to study the origins of Arthurian legends. We have somebody on our faculty, Dr. Stewart, who could do that. We've had people study the curse tablets, these pieces of lead that you would write something really mean about a person in the ancient world and like throw them into a well and, maybe this awful thing happened to them. But like, what does that actually tell you about the culture of the people that's doing them? What kind of assumptions do they make about each other? That student went on to go into sort of urban planning, and that's what she's studying now. But so things go into all kinds of different directions, but there are a lot of great opportunities there.
Great. Dr. Kitchen, in addition to being the Ancient and Medieval History Advisor, is also our History Honors Advisor. So if you could tell us a little bit about the History Honors Program, Dr. Kitchen.
Hello again. I'm delighted to discuss the Honors History Program, which I think is remarkable, and I can say that without hesitation. What makes it so special? Well, Professor Heilman referred to diving into a subject, but I can be more specific and say you actually get to work with a faculty supervisor. So honors history students are able to find an independent subject that they want to research, and they have a mentor, they have a faculty guider to help them with this independent research. And at the end of it, it's a 2-year process, really. It starts in the 3rd year and it gets finished at the 4th year. At the end of it, you produce what is officially called the final honors essay, but is popularly known as, and I think it's a more accurate title, the honors thesis, about 50 pages. So it really is a substantial work undertaken with a faculty member, and it's a great way to dive in to something. In addition to working with a faculty member and producing the honors thesis, there's a special seminar, History 500, which is just for the honors students. And this seminar, it's very broad, and it's meant to introduce students not just to matters related to historical inquiry, but broad issues to really expand your thinking about the study of the past. Our discussions include the philosophy of history, anthropology, rhetorical strategies, even the question of moral responsibility in the accounts of the past. So it's a rich, vibrant seminar that takes you outside of the traditional boundaries of historical inquiry. The other point that makes the program so special is you're with a community of like-minded students and scholars. So as I already said, you're in the seminar together. once we return to normal circumstances, you'll be together as well as students who are sharing this common task. And I'll just put it this way, this common suffering, because it is a challenging program, which leads me to my final point. Because it is so challenging, if you can do this program, you can do anything. In fact, I just ran into a student and she got in the honors program and she got her pilot's license. She's also a lawyer. So I really think accomplishing all the requirements in honors, doing that extra work, if you want to go to graduate school, many students want to go to law school, but whatever you want to do, if you just want to achieve something special and don't even have plans, I think the honors program would be worth pursuing. So again, you know my name by now, John Kitchen, easy to remember. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kitchen. Dr. Hendrickson, would you like to follow that up with a word about the religious studies?
No suffering, no suffering. Although if you would like to write about evil and suffering, that is a well-established, theme in religious studies. So a lot of the things that Dr. Kitchen just outlined are true of the honors and religious studies program as well. It's a great opportunity to embark on a more in-depth research project of your choosing with the close mentorship of a supervisor. And that is most of what the honors program in religious studies is that you, during your final year, you take the time to embark on that research project. We don't have a shared course in the third year, because there are so many different paths that religious studies students might take. There's no one thing that might bring everybody together like that. We do have an approaches to religious studies, a theory and method class that all religious studies students take. But the thing that's a little extra beyond the thesis that we ask, but don't require every honors student to do, is to consider studying a language that might make sense for your area of research. So, for example, we offer Sanskrit, we offer Biblical Hebrew. These are things that we would love to see you choose as your language other than English, if it makes sense for your area of study. And the other thing is that we encourage honors students, but not require, to take one of the methods courses in another discipline. So if your methodological approach to answering a question in the study of religion is going to be sociological or historical or anthropological, we encourage you to go take the methods course in one of those other departments too. So those are the things we encourage, along with writing the honors thesis. And I would just echo too that achievement that you come away from the program with is an amazing asset when you apply to any kind of professional program, or you just go into the workplace and you've got this amazing product that you really devoted yourself to and showed your passion and your research skills in.
Great, thank you so much. I will say, I actually did an honors history degree here at the U of A last century, and that was certainly one of the, one of the highlights of my academic career. So we're gonna shift into the question and answer session of our orientation here. So if you have questions, type them into the chat, and we will go through those as well as answer some, or address some additional questions that we've been getting essentially offline. So I see a very related question here. How do you get into the honors program? I will answer that as in my role as associate chair. It's one of those questions I often get. It's actually an application process that's based strictly on your GPA. And so you can apply to the honors programs, whether it's in classics, history, religious studies, essentially at any point in your academic career. Earlier is better. I recommend applying at the end of your first year when you've had a chance to really sort of see what courses you love, which ones you hate. I thought I was going to be a political scientist. 1 week in those poli-sci courses changed my mind dramatically. But you can always sort of change your mind as you go. Most of our students apply at the end of their second year, and it's simply something that you do online. It's a bit of a convoluted process, but it is strictly based on GPA, so you don't need letters of reference or long essays. Another key question that I received offline: what classes do you recommend first-year students take? Dr. Kamisis or Dr. Hendrickson, would you like to weigh in on that?
For classics, we have 4 100 level courses that we offer every year. So there is an introduction to Greek and then an introduction to Roman civilization. Those are classics 103 and 104. And those are often the kind of entry courses for our major. They give you a lot of the basics that you'll then go out onto in other courses. We also teach classics 102. I'm teaching this semester, which is ancient mythology, which is, we get people from all faculties, all majors involved in that. But we also, you read ancient literature in that as well. And then classics 110 is a more generalized survey of ancient civilizations, including Mesopotamia, India, ancient China, and so forth. So all the African and Eurasian, ancient Egypt, ancient civilizations. So those are the 100 level, and then the 200 level are topics courses of the kind that I was talking a fair amount about earlier in my spiel. So if you look there, you'll see things on Greek history, things on scientific terminology, etc.
Great. Dr. Hendrickson, for religious studies, what kinds of courses would you recommend first-year students take?
So we have 2 different kinds of 100 level courses. There's a series that's 2 courses, Religion 102 and Religion 103, that are our big intro courses to Western and Eastern religions, respectively. So what those courses do, for example, Western religious traditions gives you a really broad overview of the historical development and basic doctrines and beliefs of Zoroastrianism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And the Eastern religions counterpart, Religion 103, gives a really basic overview of Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and a number of other traditions. And then there's the other kind of 100 level class we have is those comparative thematic courses that I mentioned earlier. So the 2 that we have this year, for example, are the course on different apocalypses in the fall and sacred journeys and pilgrimages in the winter. And those give a bit of an intro to each of the religious traditions that they cover, as well as an intro to the theme and the idea of studying religion.
Great. And I would say for history, I really recommend taking 1 or 2 courses at the 100 level, no more than that. I think once you've got 2 history courses at the 100 level finished, it's time to move up and onward. We really offer 2 different kinds of courses at the 100 level. There's the more traditional, like Introduction to the Ancient World, and then some newer courses that are thematic courses. So I teach a course on the history of illicit drugs. Here's how heroin emerged in society. A course on, I don't teach this, but one of our colleagues teaches a course on plague and disease, history of video games, history of warfare. And so depending on sort of your interest and where you're lying, sort of where you're thinking, those kinds of thematic courses can be really appealing, or the more traditional sort of survey of different parts of the world can be more appealing. And then once you've got your exposure to those courses, they tend to be global in content. So say in my illicit drugs class, we look at every continent and as many countries as we can to try to sort of introduce you to the way historical change happened in different places of the world. I see here a number of you have questions about majors and sort of how to combine different majors. So one of the realities of the arts degree is that you have a lot of flexibility. There aren't sort of a huge number of requirements on you for whatever major you declare. And so it's actually quite easy to declare a double major to essentially get through your program with the credits for 2 majors. So if that's something that interests you, that's fine. Or you can go the more standard route of doing a major and minor. The really nice thing is that you can change your mind as you go. So for those of you who are like me, started off say in political science, realize quickly or slowly that your heart is elsewhere, you can change just by essentially the click of a button. Some changes into specialized programs like criminology are a little bit more challenging and involved, but for the most part, you can change your major every day if you'd like. Not that we recommend that, but that certainly is possible. In terms of the double major in ancient medieval history and history, or history and classics, a lot of our students do a double major, history and classics, and there you're fine. You can't double dip, like you couldn't count the same course toward your major and your minor, but it's perfectly appropriate and very common to do a double major or a major or minor in history and classics. It is true, some of our students do a double major or a major and minor in history and ancient and medieval history as their minor, or classics and ancient and medieval history as their minor, or the reverse. That's fine, that's allowed. We're moving forward in some changes to the ancient and medieval history program that might make that kind of combination more alluring, but I don't want to jump the gun too much on that. In terms of questions, I see here the question about jobs. What kinds of careers can we do with a major in this field? That's probably the most common question I get asked. Adam or Josie, do you want to start us off? To give me a break from talking. What can you do with a degree in classics or religious studies?
So a lot of the things are stuff that I think Jamie, you and Josie already spoke about in terms of things that involve communication and writing skills. They're going into legal and nonprofit fields. We have a lot of students who went from our archaeology master's program into law school. And I mean, I think one of the things that if an employer looks at history or classics or something like that on a CV, one thing I think that's going to come into their mind is this is somebody who has their own interests and follows them and gets passionate about things and isn't doing this just because it's what they're supposed to be doing. And they'll bring that into my workplace, and they'll do, they have an aptitude that they can follow for doing what it is that they're passionate about, but that they've also learned language skills, but also dealing with, and in a specialized sense, there is art historical materials and so forth. So there is a specialized job market out there, but there are also a lot of things that we can bring to employers of all kinds.
So I would just echo what Dr. Kamizis and Dr. Heilman have both said about the basic skills that you learn that are important for any kind of job. Critical thinking, analysis of evidence, making a persuasive argument on the basis of primary data. For example, if you end up working for the city and you need to decide where to put the bike lanes, you need to go out and gather data, figure out which data is the right data to bring in, analyze that data, present your case, be able to take criticism and revise your plan. Like these kinds of skills, there's no specific degree that prepares you to do any of these things. Most employers are going to train you to do the specific job that you end up in when you get there, but what they want is someone who can think, who can critically analyze data and be a very careful thinker. There are some professions that we see more of our graduates go into than others. For example, a lot of religious studies graduates go into NGO work with non-governmental organizations. They might go into education or law or social work. But those really aren't things that are predetermined by picking this particular degree. You can do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would echo that. Just in terms of thinking about some of our graduates, a lot of the students I teach go on to careers in law. That's a very popular path forward for history majors. public servants like government running the country. Education is also a very popular path, doing that history major and then the 2-year after degree in education to become a social studies teacher. And in many ways, the answer is you can do whatever you want, that it really does open up a lot of life paths for you. Very few go on to be professional professors, but that certainly isn't the most common outcome. I'm seeing in the Q&A a number of questions about the need for first-year courses before taking second-year courses. It's not a requirement for most of our second-year courses. Some courses do have specific prerequisites. I would say that just sort of as a general rule of thumb, unless you're super sort of love, say, social studies for history, jumping right away into the 200 level is, I would do a 100 level first, but it's not a requirement, and you know yourself best. And so if you feel that you have those skills, if you did like AP or IB, I think you could safely jump into the 200 level. But in general, moving sequentially, getting a 100 level down is generally a good rule of thumb, even though there's not necessarily a requirement. One of the first questions we had was actually directed to our undergraduate societies. Could you speak a little bit more, Teagan, Joshua, or Aidan, to the kinds of things that, activities that can be done outside the classroom when you're studying for these degrees? I'm not throwing you on the spot.
Well, I think the first thing to do if you want to engage in history and classics outside the classroom is to come to one of the events and even again with religious studies, is to come to the events. Again, our first event is on September 4th from 5 to 8 p.m. It's just going to be board games. It's a really great way to connect. These kinds of events are really great ways to connect with other history and classics students to kind of start to build that community. And there's many other ways. For example, outside the classroom all summer, I've been actually doing research, conducting research in, well, for me, it was the early modern Islamic world. And that's just one of the many ways to connect with your field of study and discipline outside of the classroom.
That's great. If I could just quickly interject, Dr. Kamisis, would you be able to talk just a little bit about our field schools, the Greece Field School?
Absolutely. So for as many years as I've been here, every year, my colleague, Dr. Hogsma, has taken a group of students to her archaeological site in central Greece. It's about 3 weeks usually during July, and you get actively involved. You're out there digging, you're out there processing artifacts. And I have to say, as an experience, every student who comes back from this thing will tell you how much they loved it. Like, it's actually sometimes very difficult to get people to shut up about it. And like, it's clearly, as a community and just as an experience, it's a great thing. And Dr. Hogsma knows exactly, she is very good at running this and very responsive to student concerns. And obviously it didn't happen this summer, but if I know Marguerite, the minute that it is legally possible to do this again, she will be in Greece with her students, and you want to be one of those people because it's an amazing experience all around.
Well, that is a great note to end on. So thank you all so much. I know we didn't get every question answered. You're more than welcome to reach out to me with an email. Jamie Hallman, my email address is in the chat box. Hope to see you in our classes, and don't hesitate to reach out. So thank you all so much for joining, and thank you to our panelists. Now we'll do the awkward Zoom wave goodbye.